So you just got a trim router from Festool. How does it all go together? And what are the top accessories that you need and what bits actually work in it? This video will teach you how. So there's two versions of the MFK700. I'll have both of them in the description. The first one is the set. It'll trim edge banding, you'll see. I'll show you the setup with the 1.5 degree horizontal base, very versatile. But it also comes with the vertical base. And what that allows you to do, what you do with a normal trim router, you can put small profiles like to knock off a hard edge, or you can run a groove for a back. I'll show you those today. But when the Contouro came out, this is the MFK700 EQ/B. And if you're only using it for the Contouro and edge banding, this is the one for you. And I'll show you what all of this incorporates on this vertical base. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna chuck up a proper bit to work with the MFK700 when I'm working with the 1.5 degree base. And there's a certain distance that you need, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I'm gonna put the post with the notch toward this knob here, just like this, and lock it in with this knob here. One of the most important parts about setting up this horizontal base, the 1.5 degree, is knowing what your allowable distance is from the top of the collet to here. So you need to know your length of carbide. So I'm just doing a quick measurement, and I know it's about 16 millimeters. So the next thing you gotta install is right here on your router. There's two screws, I've already taken them out. And there's no bearing on this bit, so how are we going to control the path? It's pretty simple. It's with this bearing. It's called a follower bearing, and this is what rides on the front edge. And it only goes at one speed, your speed. So there'll be no gumming up of a flush trim bit bearing. So I just take those two screws and I put the follower bearing just like this, and you have adjustment on the carbide with this little knob right here. So now we got to adjust the height. We're going to be following with this bearing on the front edge, and this basically becomes another bearing that rides here. So we got to adjust the height. It's easy. You just loosen this knob and you turn this, and there's a plus and minus here, and you just turn it and it moves it up and down. Okay, so there's 2 points of contact here and right here on the carbide. So it's just a simple process. I loosen this, and you're gonna see where I have daylight. I love using daylight, and I'm gonna dial that right in so it's absolutely perfect. I've lost it. There's no daylight here or daylight on the carbide. I'm gonna walk over, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a little test to see if I have it dialed in. You'll see. Before I start routing and testing my depth, there's another hole right here, and there's also a window. I'm gonna open it up, and this is my dust extraction, and this is where I connect. So I'm only gonna go a little ways with this to see if I've adjusted the depth right. Now, this is also important. You see this little bearing? I'm not gonna start it on the front edge. I'm gonna start it right here. Okay, that way there, I can turn it around and come at a right angle and trim it. Don't attempt to go like this and start it. That's just gonna create a pull off of your banding. So I'm just gonna start it here. And come over here. And unfortunately, I set it perfect over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to reset this to show you the failure so I can show you how to dial it in. So you can see I need to do an adjustment, but you're going to also notice here the 1.5 degree angled cut, because there's your top, here's your top veneer, here's the second veneer, but look at the third veneer. So it's actually cutting at that angle. So now we got to dial it in a little bit shallower. So you're gonna notice a plus and minus on here. And this is a really cool feature. Plus means I'm gonna go deeper. Shallower this way means I'm gonna take a lighter cut. And you see these bumps right here? Each one of those is 1/10 of a millimeter. So how do I line it up? Well, I learned this from my buddy Keith. I see this right here. I make a mark here so I know when I loosen this knob, I need to go shallower. So I go like this, I go 1, 2, and make another test cut. And you see how I'm at a right angle? And if I come back and I check it, okay. Now, I always use this. I always use my fingernail. If I go like this, it feels fine. But if I use my fingernail, I feel a slight catch. So, it looks like I overcompensated. So I'm gonna go a click deeper. I'll loosen this, and I'll take it and I'll go this way. There's one. Let's see where we're at. That now is dialed in perfect. So you see, by a little trial and error on a scrap piece, this is dialed in for good. So now I'm doing a kitchen, right? Watch. I can go all day just like this. Pretty simple. It's all dialed in. So I just flush trimmed this 0.5 millimeter edge banding. I'm all set up for it. But now I want to trim this hardwood banding that I put on here with some glue, glued it up. It's a really nice durable edge. So I could trim it with this because this is only 5 millimeter. And guess what? It's absolutely perfect. Almost perfect. So if you really think about it, I can go up to 15 millimeters thick. Now when I'm looking at this, 1.5 degree cut is perfectly flush, but it's actually got a slight angle. And if I go thicker, it's gonna be accentuated. So that's why there's a 0 degree base accessory for the MFK700, which makes it basically acting like a lipping planer. So when you look at both of these bases, this here is the 1.5 and this is the 0 degree. Now, for quick reference, it says 0 degree on there, but I have always seen it right here where it's actually milled. So instead of tilting it ever so slightly, the router, it keeps it at 0 degrees. Let's hook it up. So I just put the 0 degree base on here, and I'm always gonna do a double check to see if the depth has remained the same. Perfect. And once it's set, you can just go right through everything. And the amazing part, no dust. So one of the things I use my MFK700 for is to run the groove to accept my backs for my cabinetry. With this trim router and a 6 millimeter bit installed with a vertical base, and this is an accessory, it's the parallel guide, okay? It makes the job of doing this effortless. Check this out. So when you look at something like this vertical base, there's a bunch of knobs on here, but there's so much to this, and I'm gonna try to explain everything. To adjust the height, it's right here, this green knob, and there's a post right here. So you have to loosen here and also on this big knob. Then you can dial in the depth absolutely perfect. You're gonna also notice something on here that's on every Festool router, is when we set it up, right here that I'm pointing to is the exact center of the router bit, because when I place these two posts into these two holes and this knob here and lock it in, it is dead center. So right here, here, and here on all four sides, there's a scribe center line. This is really important. So there's two more knobs on the top here, and you'll notice them right here. What those are for the rods, for the parallel guide. So when I slip that in, you'll see how it deadheads right there and right here. So I could set this whole router up with the parallel guide on the center line without even installing the motor. So I'm going to install the parallel guide. I'm going to slip it in just like this. And you're gonna see how I can bring it right over and bring it exactly on that center line and lock it in. So you'll see I have this all set up, but there's one more increment of measurement I gotta set, and we'll put the motor in now and set the depth. You set the notch toward this knob, you slide it in and lock it in. So for the groove, I'm gonna go down 9 millimeters. I set up and made my own gauge block with a 5 domino and a 4 domino. 5 and 4 equals 9, and I'll show you how to set this up. But first, I wanna make sure I take this knob and loosen it, and take the big knob and loosen it, and I will set that height with this block, with this green knob right here. Okay, when setting up a parallel guide, think of it like a jointer. You have an in-feed table and an out-feed table. You have to keep this balanced so you don't turn into the material. So what I like to do is I like to take the cord and the hose, bring it out here, and look at all the surface area you have here with the vertical base. It's wicked. So what I like to do is bump in like this. I'm gonna turn it on now, back it away, turn it on. My pressure was on the front here first, so I don't walk away with it. And then as I get to the end, I'm starting to put pressure here, and I'll go right off with it. And it's that easy. The whole setup will just take you a few seconds. You're also gonna notice something, because I put the dust extraction here. Look at that, there's no dust. It's absolutely amazing. Also of note, on the bottom of the base, the hole right here where the bit comes through, it's threaded for the 2-piece template guides, but because it's threaded, I could put that template guide in there like this, spin it in, and guess what? It's actually self-sended into the template guide. It's perfect. As I'm changing the bit to do a small round over and break an edge, I just wanted to mention that it comes with an 8 millimeter collet and a 1/4 inch collet, so you can use all your 1/4 inch bits. Like all trim routers out there, they're great to grab and go, have installed a round over bit to break edges. But with this vertical base on the MFK700, you have so much more router base to keep it stable while you're doing it and get great dust extraction with it. So I'm just gonna take it up, bring it over, and run it. Absolutely perfect edge. Okay, have you ever had to take a trim router and actually route this short profile here on the edge? It's a recipe for disaster because you're trying to balance it like this to make that cut. On the MFK700, there's an actual hole here, and what goes in there is the rod, and it acts as a stability bar to get that round over absolutely perfect on that short edge. So we just covered the set version, where it comes with the 2 different bases in the MFK700. Let's cover the MFK700 EQB, and it comes with 1 base, and it's very unique to trimming edge banding, but you can use it for so much more. Stay tuned. So you gotta remember, when you're choosing the differences between the routers, you really gotta be specific on what you're gonna use it the majority of the time. And also, there are some really special router bits for this. So the different applications is if you're using a thicker edge banding and you want to flush trim it and put a slight radius on that PVC banding, you can with special bits. I'll go over that. And then what if I'm trimming just normal banding? Yes, I can do that. I want to trim it flush, but there's a special bit for that called a planer bearing, because you're going to be trimming it from the top, and you can do, you know, from 0.5 all the way up to really thicker bandings. But you got to remember, there's a lot of tweaking with this bit, and I'll show you how to do that so it's perfectly flush. Now, if I'm just trimming, or you're just trimming 0.5 or 1 millimeter banding, and that's all you're gonna do, then the choice would be to what? The MFK700 set, because you're trimming it at that 1.5. The beauty of these bits is it flush trims and puts a radius on the PVC banding. Also, you're going to notice that it's insert tooling. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 different spins to refresh the carbide, and it's on both sides. So this is basically 4 bits in one. So what you need to do by choosing this bit, you need the thickness of the banding. I have 2 millimeter banding on here, so I chose a 2 millimeter radius. And the radii or radiuses is available in 1, 1.5, 2, and 3 millimeter radius. On the base, you're going to see this little offset. And because we're going to be trimming banding like this, this allows us to start the router and come in and trim the banding. It's offset for the rise of the banding above the plywood. So the next thing that confuses so many people I've seen is this part right here. And it's pretty simple. We're going to be spinning this against the PVC, and this bearing is held in tension by this spring-loaded piece right here. Okay, so what happens is just the carbide is gonna cut and the bearing is gonna be held in tension. So this will ride this PVC at the rate you pull it, your feed rate, and it won't spin and mar this face. So I chucked up my radius bit that's got a 2 millimeter radius, and now I'm gonna show you how to set it up so we can do a few test cuts and absolutely dial it in with micro adjust. So let's use something we know is dead flat, and we're going to use daylight to set this bit. Okay, I'm going to place it here. I'm going to loosen here, okay, and I'm going to loosen here because this rides on 2 posts. As I bring it to the bearing, I see daylight on the radius. There's 2 points of contact here and on the radius part of the bit. So what I want to do is, this is my micro adjust. I want to bring it right up, okay? And I like to see daylight here first and then bring it down so I don't see any daylight. And what'll happen is I'll make that test pass and we'll dial it in perfect on a test piece. And this part's wicked easy. This is the spring-loaded tensioner to hold that bearing in tension. And what you'll do is we'll slip it in just like this. Pull it back so it holds just the bearing in tension and not the carbide. So when I'm laying up some thicker bandings, I always put a couple extra pieces on a piece of material that I know is scrap so I can dial this bit in perfect. It's better to do a strike than have it on your good piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this bearing right here, hold it in tension here, and make a quick test run, and then we'll dial it in. Okay, so this is standing still pretty proud. It's no problem. You'll see that I got I got the radius on there, but I got a lot of glue from the Conturo. So I'm gonna go what? Deeper. So I'm gonna open it up here and dial it in. Okay, so that second pass that I made, you have a perfect radius and it's perfectly flush. It only took 2 passes and I have this dialed in for the rest of the day or the rest of the project. That takes care of the PVC with the radius. Now we're gonna go to what if I'm just trimming banding, but maybe thicker banding. I wanna set up this bit here, it's called the planer bit. And I'll show you how to tweak it absolutely perfect. So the bearing, you'll see no bearing on here, the bearing will actually be this offset here. So the 2 points of contact, as I set it up with my dead flat piece here, is the offset base and this little piece of carbide here. Because we're going to be relying on this piece here to keep it nice and steady or stable. So I'm going to take it like this, and we're going to see the daylight. 2 points of contact, remember. Here, I have daylight here, and I have it here on the tip of that carbide. So I'm just going to take it in and dial it right in. And of course, I'm going to make a couple of test passes. So as I place it on there, here's my offset base. It'll be right here. But I also have this black pat right here that I'll bump up to here. Here's the test pass. Let's see if we've defined the depth. So I obviously cut a little deeper. So let's dial it in. I'm going to go a little bit shallower. So we did it over here, we dialed it in, we did it over here. Now you're gonna notice something. That is absolutely perfect. That is as well, and that only took 2 times, but here's the thing you can remember. Plywood has undulations in it, and this right here obviously was a little high. So make sure you're keeping this stable when you're trimming. And sometimes you gotta make those test pieces to understand the height of or the depth setting. But once this is set up, it's good to go. So once this is dialed in, I can do some thicker banding with this, and it's absolutely perfect flush at a 0 degree. So it's this base here is very versatile. So just a little caveat to this router. When you're using something like this, whether the horizontal base or this vertical base, I love this feature. A lot of people don't know, I just don't throw it down on something. I hang it right here on my tool holder. It's always right there when I need it. So hopefully this video took a lot or a little or a lot of confusion out of the MFK700. If you're still confused, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Hey, as we always say from the SedgeTool shop, be positive, stay sharp, and we mean wicked sharp.